The Valkyrie had watched Earth for 3 years. Their scout ships stayed hidden behind the planet's moon, collecting data and recording everything they saw. They watched humans fight each other over land. They watched them argue about politics and religion. They watched them pollute their own air and poison their own water. The Valkyrie High Council reviewed the reports and came to a simple conclusion. These creatures were primitive. They were weak. They were divided. They would fall within a single day. High Commander Zetholal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and looked at the blue planet on his view screen. His gray skin stretched tight over his skull as he smiled. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he gave the order that would change everything. "Begin the cleansing," he said. 40 plasma warheads launched from the Valkyrie fleet. They moved faster than any human weapon. They burned through the atmosphere like falling stars. And then they hit. Denver disappeared in a flash of white light. The city of 2 million souls was gone in less than 3 seconds. Chicago followed. The great towers along the lake crumbled and fell as fire swept through the streets. Houston, Atlanta, Phoenix, Dallas. One by one, the cities died. Admiral Jack Morrison was eating breakfast aboard the carrier USS Defiance when the alarms started screaming. The ship was stationed in lunar orbit, part of a small military presence that most people back home did not even know existed. Jack dropped his coffee and ran to the bridge. What he saw on the screen stopped him cold. Half of his country was burning. Lieutenant Amy Lawson sat at the communication station. She was 26 years old, with short brown hair and freckles across her nose. Her hands were shaking as she worked the controls. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she did not stop working. "Sir," she said, her voice cracking, "we have lost contact with 17 major cities. Casualty estimates are coming in. They're saying 20 million, maybe more." Jack felt his legs go weak. His wife was in Denver. His daughter had been visiting her grandmother in Chicago. He gripped the railing in front of him and forced himself to breathe. He could not fall apart. Not now. Not when his crew needed him. "Who did this?" he asked. "Unknown vessel, sir. They came from behind the moon. Our satellites picked them up too late. They are holding position about 50,000 kilometers out." Jack walked slowly to his command chair and sat down. The bridge was silent except for the soft beeping of computers and the distant hum of the ship's engines. Every member of his crew was looking at him. They were scared. They were angry. They were waiting for him to tell them what to do. He thought about his wife's smile. He thought about his daughter's laugh. He thought about all the people down there who had just been murdered for no reason at all. And somewhere deep inside him, something cold and hard began to form. "Get me every ship commander in the fleet," he said quietly. "Every submarine captain still alive. Every pilot. Every soldier with a working radio. I want a full count of everything we have left." Amy wiped her eyes and started working. "Sir, what are we going to do?" Jack looked at the view screen. The Valkyrie ships were visible now, dark shapes against the stars. They were not moving. They were just sitting there, waiting for the humans to surrender. "We are going to make them regret ever finding us," Jack said. The Valkyrie sent their first transmission 2 hours later. High Commander Zethel appeared on every screen on Earth. His gray face filled televisions and phones and computers around the world. He spoke in perfect English, his voice cold and smooth. "People of Earth," he said, "I am High Commander Zethal of the Valkyrie Dominion. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your governments have fallen. Your military forces have been destroyed. You have one planetary rotation to surrender all remaining military assets and submit to Dominion rule. If you refuse, we will continue the cleansing until nothing remains." The transmission ended. Around the world, people stood in the streets and stared at the sky. They held each other and cried. They waited for their leaders to tell them what to do, but their leaders were dead. The president had been in Washington when the bombs fell. The vice president had been in Dallas. Most of Congress had been scattered across the burning cities. The chain of command had been shattered in a single afternoon. In London, the Prime Minister called an emergency meeting. In Beijing, the Chinese Premier stared at satellite images and said nothing. In Moscow, the Russian president poured himself a drink and wondered if humanity had reached its end. But something strange began to happen. Something the Valkyrie had not expected. People stopped panicking. They stopped crying. They stopped waiting for someone else to save them. Instead, they started working. In a basement laboratory in Geneva, a physicist named Nathan Brooks pulled up his research on experimental propulsion systems. He had spent 20 years studying theoretical faster-than-light travel. Everyone had called him a dreamer. Now he called his team together and told them they had 3 days to make his dreams real. In a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Lisa Carter took command of what remained of the United States military. She was 52 years old, with gray hair and hard eyes. She had survived because she had been inspecting the underground facility when the bombs fell. Now she started making phone calls. On the USS Defiance, Admiral Jack Morrison received reports from around the world. Ships were checking in. Submarines were surfacing. Pilots were finding working aircraft. Soldiers were gathering supplies and weapons. Everywhere, humans were doing what humans had always done in times of crisis. They were fighting back. Jack looked at the latest numbers. It was not much. A few hundred ships. A few thousand aircraft. Maybe 2 million soldiers scattered across 6 continents. Against an alien fleet with technology centuries ahead of anything Earth had ever built. But Jack remembered something his grandfather had told him once. His grandfather had fought in the Second World War, had survived battles that should have killed him a dozen times over. The enemy always thinks numbers matter, the old man had said. They think technology matters. They think strategy matters. And they are right. All those things matter. But they forget the one thing that matters most. Will. When a man decides he would rather die than lose, you cannot beat him. You can kill him, but you cannot beat him. Jack stood up and faced his crew. They think this is over, he said. They think we are finished. They are wrong. Get me a secure channel to Geneva. Get me a channel to Beijing, Moscow, London, everyone. It is time to show these aliens what happens when you poke a hornet's nest. Amy looked up at him with red eyes. Sir, do you really think we can win? Jack smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. I do not think we can win, he said. I know we will, because we do not have any other choice. The first thing humanity did was stop fighting itself. For thousands of years, nations had guarded their secrets like dragons guarding gold. Military technology was hidden behind walls of classification and lies. Scientists worked in isolation, forbidden from sharing their discoveries with rivals. Countries that had been enemies for centuries refused to speak to each other. All of that ended in a single day. In Geneva, Dr. Nathan Brooks stood before a screen showing faces from around the world. Scientists from America, Russia, China, India, Germany, Japan, and a dozen other nations looked back at him. These were people who had spent their careers competing against each other. Now they were all on the same team. Here is what we know, Nathan said. His voice was steady, but his hands were trembling. The alien ships use some kind of quantum fold technology for propulsion. We have been studying the radiation signatures from their engines for the past 6 hours. The physics is beyond anything we have built, but it is not beyond anything we have imagined. A Russian scientist named Yuri spoke up. You are talking about the fold drive theory? The one everyone said was impossible? Everyone was wrong, Nathan said. I have been working on this for 20 years. I know how to build one. What I do not have is the resources, the materials, the manpower. Alone, it would take me a decade. How long with all of us working together? Asked a Chinese woman named Dr. Lin. Nathan took a deep breath. 3 days. Maybe 4. If nothing goes wrong, then nothing goes wrong, General Lisa Carter said from her bunker in Colorado. Tell us what you need. Every nation on this call will provide it. No questions asked. No arguments about who gets credit. We build this thing or we die. Those are the only 2 options. Nobody argued. For the first time in human history, the nations of Earth worked together with a single purpose. While the scientists worked on propulsion, something else was happening on the other side of the world. In a secret facility in the Nevada desert, a team of engineers had been studying something they were not supposed to have. 50 years ago, a Valkyrie scout ship had crashed in the American Southwest. The government had recovered it and hidden it away, spending decades trying to understand its technology. They had made some progress, but most of the alien systems remained mysteries. Now a young engineer named Stephanie Cole stood inside the crashed ship, looking at the weapon systems she had studied for years. I know how to beat them, she said. Her supervisor, an older man named Gary, looked at her with tired eyes. Explain. Their shields are amazing. They can absorb kinetic impacts. They can disperse energy weapons. But they have a weakness. Stephanie pulled up her tablet and showed him a diagram. The shields work by generating a field around the ship. That field has to stay stable or it collapses. And the field is calibrated to handle specific types of energy. What type of energy can it not handle? Stephanie smiled. Gravitational waves. The shields cannot process gravitational distortion. If we can build a weapon that fires concentrated gravitational pulses, their shields will not just fail. They will collapse inward. The ship will crush itself. Gary stared at her for a long moment. Can you build something like that? Give me the right materials and a team of good engineers. I can have a prototype in 4 days. You have 2, Gary said. Get to work. Across the ocean, the military was gathering. Admiral Jack Morrison had set up a command center on the dark side of the moon. The aliens could not see what was happening there. Their sensors were focused on Earth, watching for signs of resistance. They had no idea that humanity was building something behind their backs. Ships arrived from every nation. American destroyers, Chinese cruisers, Russian submarines converted for space travel, British frigates, German carriers, Japanese fighters. They came in pieces, transported by shuttles that flew low and fast to avoid detection. Captain Megan Torres oversaw the construction. She was a small woman with dark hair and dark eyes, but she had a voice that could make grown men stand at attention. She had been a shipyard commander in San Diego before the attack. Now she was building a fleet that would decide the fate of her species. We need to work faster, she told her teams. Every hour we waste is an hour they have to find us. A young worker named Danny raised his hand. Ma'am, we are already working 20-hour shifts. People are passing out from exhaustion. Megan walked over to him and put a hand on his shoulder. I know, she said softly. I know we are tired. I know we are scared. But think about everyone we lost. Think about everyone who is counting on us right now. They are down there on Earth, looking up at the sky, wondering if help is coming. We are that help. So we do not get to be tired. We do not get to be scared. We work until the job is done. Danny nodded and went back to his station. Nobody complained again. On the Valkyrie flagship, High Commander Zeth Al was growing impatient. Why have they not surrendered? He demanded. We destroyed their cities. We killed millions of them. They should be on their knees begging for mercy. His second-in-command, a smaller Velthari named Kelver, studied the data on his screen. They have gone quiet. Very little communication. Very little movement. They may be in shock, or they may be planning something. Impossible, Kelver said. They have no ships capable of reaching us. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. What could they possibly do? Zephal turned back to the view screen. Earth hung there, blue and green and white, looking peaceful despite the fires still burning on its surface. Something about the silence bothered him. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen a species go quiet like this. Usually they screamed. They begged. They sent desperate messages pleading for their lives. But the humans were just silent. Increase sensor sweeps, Zethal ordered. I want to know what they are doing. Yes, Commander. But the sensors found nothing. The humans had learned to hide. They had learned to be patient. They had learned to be quiet, and in the shadows of the moon, their fleet grew larger every hour. On the third day, Dr. Nathan Brooks made his announcement. It works, he said, his face filling screens around the world. The fold drive works. We can move faster than they can. Much faster. Admiral Morrison felt something he had not felt since the attack. Hope. How soon can you have them installed? He asked. We are already installing them. Every ship in the fleet will have one by tomorrow. And the weapons? The gravitational system? Nathan smiled and stepped aside. Stephanie Cole appeared on the screen, looking exhausted but triumphant. We call it the Cascade Array, she said. One shot from this weapon will generate a gravitational pulse strong enough to collapse a Volturi ship from the inside out. Their shields will not save them. Nothing will save them. Morrison leaned back in his chair and looked around the command center. Officers from a dozen nations stood together, watching the screens, waiting for orders. They had started this fight as Americans, Russians, Chinese, Europeans. Now they were just humans. How long until we are ready? Morrison asked. 12 hours, Megan Torres replied. The fleet will be complete. 16 ships. Fully armed. Fully crewed. Ready to fight. Morrison stood up and faced the view screen. The Velthari fleet was still visible, still waiting, still thinking they had already won. Then let them wait 12 more hours, he said. And then we show them what they woke up. The 16 ships floated in the darkness behind the moon, hidden from alien eyes. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Sleek hulls of titanium and steel, built in less than a week by hands that had never stopped working. Each ship carried the hopes of 8 billion people. Admiral Jack Morrison walked through the flagship, the vessel they had named Reckoning. He wanted to see his crew before the battle. He wanted to look them in the eyes and let them know that their commander was with them, not hiding in some safe bunker far away. He found Lieutenant Amy Lawson in the communications center, running final checks on her equipment. How are you holding up? He asked. Amy looked up at him with tired eyes. She had not slept more than a few hours since the attack. None of them had. My parents were in Phoenix, she said quietly. My little brother was starting college there this year. 18 years old. He wanted to be a doctor. Morrison did not say anything. There was nothing to say. Words could not bring back the dead. But I will tell you something, sir, Amy continued. I am not sad anymore. I was sad for the first 2 days. Now I am just angry. And I want to make sure my brother did not die for nothing. Morrison put a hand on her shoulder. He did not. None of them did. We are going to make sure of that. He moved on through the ship, talking to crew members, checking on preparations. In the engine room, he found a team of engineers making final adjustments to the fold drive. The lead engineer was a young man named Chris Park, barely 25 years old, who had been working on theoretical physics at a university before the attack. Is it going to work? Morrison asked. Chris wiped grease from his hands and nodded. Yes, sir. I have run the calculations 100 times. When we activate the drive, we will move faster than anything the Volturi have ever seen. They will not even know we are coming until we are right on top of them. And if something goes wrong? Chris hesitated. Then, we tear a hole in space-time, and everything within 1,000 kilometers ceases to exist. Morrison stared at him. But that will not happen, Chris added quickly. Probably. Almost certainly. Morrison decided not to ask any more questions. In the weapons bay, Stephanie Cole was personally overseeing the installation of the cascade arrays. She had not left the room in 18 hours. Checking every connection, every circuit, every piece of the weapon she had designed. You should rest, Morrison said. I will rest when they are dead, Stephanie replied without looking up. Every single one of them. Morrison understood. Everyone on these ships had lost someone. Everyone was carrying the same weight of grief and rage. It was what drove them forward when their bodies wanted to collapse. On the bridge of the reckoning, Commander Kevin Harris was studying tactical displays. He was a large man with a shaved head and calm brown eyes, a 20-year veteran who had seen combat in 3 different wars. Nothing had prepared him for this. What do we know about their fleet? Morrison asked. Kevin pulled up a holographic display showing the Volturi formation. 42 ships total. The flagship, which they call the Eternal Conquest, is the biggest. About 3 times the size of our largest vessel. They have 12 heavy cruisers, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent. The rest are smaller support ships and fighters. And we have 16 ships. Yes, sir. Morrison studied the display. The math was not good. Even with superior speed and the cascade weapons, they were massively outnumbered. If the attack failed, there would be no second chance. Humanity would be finished. We need to hit them hard and fast, Morrison said. No hesitation. No mercy. We take out the flagship first. Cut off the head, and the body will panic. Kevin nodded. I agree. But sir, there is something else you should see. He changed the display. Now it showed the Volturi ships from a different angle, revealing details that had been hidden before. Their shields are strongest at the front and sides, Kevin explained. But there is a gap at the rear, near the engine ports. If we can get behind them, we can do even more damage. Can we get behind them? With the full drives? Yes, we can be anywhere we want before they even know we have moved. Morrison smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. Then that is what we do. We come out of nowhere, we hit them from behind. And we do not stop until every single one of their ships is burning. As the final hours ticked away, messages came in from Earth. People around the world knew something was about to happen. They did not know the details, but they had seen the shuttles launching. They had heard the rumors about a secret fleet. And now they were sending messages of support, hope, and love to the soldiers they might never see again. Admiral Morrison read some of them in his quarters. A mother in London writing to her son on one of the ships. A husband in Tokyo sending a final love letter to his wife. Children drawing pictures of rockets and stars, asking the brave soldiers to save them. One message stood out from the rest. It was from a small town in Kansas, sent by a young woman named Emily, who worked as a schoolteacher. I do not know if anyone will read this, she had written. I do not know if it matters. But I want you to know that we are watching. All of us, the whole world. We are scared, but we are also proud. Proud that there are people willing to fight for us. Proud that humanity is not giving up. Whatever happens tomorrow, thank you. Thank you for being brave when the rest of us could not be. Morrison set down the message and stared at the wall of his quarters. Through the small window, He could see Earth in the distance. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked so peaceful from here, so beautiful. He thought about his wife, his daughter, the home they would never return to, the life they would never live. Then he stood up and walked to the bridge. The crew was assembled. Officers from America, Russia, China, Europe, and a dozen other nations stood together at their stations. They were not soldiers of different countries anymore. They were soldiers of Earth. "Open a channel to all ships," Morrison ordered. Amy worked her console. "Channel open, sir." Morrison looked at the view screen. The other 15 ships of the fleet were visible, floating in formation, waiting for his command. "This is Admiral Morrison," he said. "In a few hours, we are going to do something that has never been done before. We are going to fight for our entire species. Not for our countries. Not for our governments. For humanity." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The enemy thinks we are weak. They think we are primitive. They think they have already won. We are going to show them how wrong they are. We are going to show them what happens when you attack Earth, when you kill our families, when you threaten our future." His voice grew harder. "No mercy, no retreat, no surrender. We fight until they are destroyed or we are dead. Those are the only two options. And I know which one I choose." Across the fleet, crew members straightened at their stations. Fear faded from their eyes, replaced by something harder, something darker, something that the Velthari had never seen in all their centuries of conquest. The look of humans who had nothing left to lose. "All ships," Morrison said. "Prepare to engage. In 1 hour, we end this." The engines hummed to life. The weapons powered up. The fold drives began to glow. And in the darkness of space, 16 ships prepared to change history. High Commander Zethel was eating his evening meal when the alarms started screaming. He dropped his food and ran to the bridge of the Eternal Conquest. His 4 eyes scanned the view screens, trying to understand what was happening. His officers were shouting at each other, pointing at displays that made no sense. "Report," Zethel demanded. Kelver looked up at him with something Zethel had never seen in his second-in-command before. "Fear. Ships, Commander." "Human ships. They appeared out of nowhere." "That is impossible. Humans do not have full technology. They do now." Zethel looked at the tactical display and felt his blood run cold. 16 vessels had materialized behind his fleet, perfectly positioned in the blind spot where Velthari shields were weakest. They were already firing. The first shot from the Reckoning hit the cruiser Devastator directly in its engine port. The ship did not explode. It did something worse. The hull began to bend and twist as gravitational forces tore at it from the inside. Metal screamed. Bulkheads collapsed. In less than 10 seconds, the entire vessel crumpled into a ball of twisted wreckage, crushing everyone inside. "What weapon is that?" Zethal shouted. Nobody answered. Nobody knew. On the bridge of the Reckoning, Admiral Morrison watched the first Velthari ship die and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Target the next cruiser," he ordered. "Do not give them time to regroup." The second shot was fired. Another Velthari ship collapsed in on itself, its shields useless against the gravitational pulse. Then a third. A fourth. The alien fleet finally began to react. Ships turned to face the human vessels, their weapons charging. But they were too slow. The human ships were already moving, their full drives carrying them to new positions before the Velthari could aim. "They are everywhere," Kelver said, his voice breaking. "We cannot track them. We cannot target them." Zethel grabbed the tactical officer by his uniform. "Then fire at everything. Blanket the entire air. Something has to hit them." The Velthari ships opened fire. Plasma bolts and energy beams filled the space around them, creating a storm of destruction. But the human ships were never where the weapons expected them to be. They jumped in, fired, and vanished before the return shots could reach them. On the human ship Vengeance, Captain Megan Torres commanded her crew with icy precision. "Jump to coordinate 773, she ordered. "Fire on the cruiser to our left. Then jump again immediately." The ship flickered out of existence and reappeared beside a Valkyrie cruiser. The cascade array fired. The cruiser died. The Vengeance was gone before the debris had stopped spinning. "Another one down," Megan said. "Keep moving. Do not let them breathe." Across the battlefield, the human fleet moved like ghosts. They struck from above, below, behind. They targeted engine ports and weapon batteries and bridge sections. They showed no mercy because mercy was a luxury they could no longer afford. "High Commander." Zethel watched his fleet being torn apart and felt something he had never experienced before: desperation. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead human vessel," he commanded. "The one they call Reckoning. Destroy it and the others will fall." 20 Valkyrie ships turned their weapons toward Admiral Morrison's flagship. Energy beams lanced through space, creating a web of destruction that nothing should have been able to survive. But the Reckoning was not there. It had jumped behind the Valkyrie formation, appearing directly beneath the Eternal Conquest. "Commander," Culver said, his voice barely a whisper. "They are below us." Zethel looked down at the view screen in horror. The human ship was right there, close enough to touch. And its weapons were pointed directly at his hull dot on the Reckoning. Admiral Morrison leaned forward in his command chair. "Open a channel," he said. Amy worked a console. "Channel open, sir." "High Commander Zethel. This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. 12 days ago, you killed 23 million of my people. You destroyed our cities. You burned our homes. You thought we would surrender. You thought we would kneel. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest was silent. Every Valkyrie was staring at the view screen, at the face of the human commander who had done the impossible. We do not kneel," Morrison continued. "We never have. We never will. Your 40 warheads were impressive. But while you were waiting for our surrender, we built something too." He paused. "The difference is that we only needed 16. "Fire," Morrison ordered. The cascade array activated. The gravitational pulse struck the Eternal Conquest with devastating force. The massive flagship, 3 kilometers long and carrying 10,000 crew members, began to collapse. Bulkheads bent. Decks crushed together. The screams of dying Valkyrie filled the communication channels. "High Commander." Zethel watched the walls of his bridge closing in around him. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had destroyed civilizations that had existed for millennia. And now he was dying at the hands of creatures he had dismissed as primitive. "This is not possible," he whispered as the ceiling came down to meet him. The Eternal Conquest imploded. The flagship of the Valkyrie invasion fleet became a twisted ball of metal and flesh. Floating dead in the void of space, the remaining Valkyrie ships broke formation. What had been an organized fleet became a panicked mob, each vessel trying to flee in a different direction. But there was nowhere to run. The human ships followed them, picking them off one by one. On the bridge of the Reckoning, Lieutenant Amy Lawson monitored the battle. 17 enemy ships destroyed, she reported. 21, 28. "They are running, sir." "Then we chase them," Morrison said. "Every single one." "Sir, some of them are heading for the relay beacon. If they reach it, they can call for reinforcements." Commander Kevin Harris looked up from his tactical display. "Admiral, if we let them warn the Dominion, they will send a larger fleet. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands." Morrison considered this for exactly 2 seconds. "Let one ship through," he said. "Just one. The smallest one. I want them to send a message to their empire. Sir, I want their entire species to know what happened here today. I want them to know that they came to Earth expecting an easy victory, and instead they found something else entirely. Amy nodded slowly, understanding. What message do you want to send, sir? Morrison looked at the view screen. The last Valkyrie ships were being destroyed one by one. The battle that should have been impossible was already won. The message is simple, he said. Do not come back, ever. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, 41 Valkyrie ships had been destroyed. One small scout vessel had been allowed to escape, carrying a survivor named Kelver, who had ejected from the Eternal Conquest, seconds before its destruction. The human fleet had not lost a single ship. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the reckoning, surrounded by officers who looked as exhausted as he felt. They had done it. They had beaten an enemy that should have been unbeatable. They had saved their species from extinction, but Morrison did not feel like celebrating. He felt empty, tired, old. Set a course for Earth orbit, he said quietly. It is time to go home. The fold drives activated, and the victorious fleet disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind nothing but the wreckage of their enemies. Kelver's small ship limped through space for 3 days. Before reaching the nearest Dominion outpost, he was the only survivor, the only witness to what had happened. And when he told his story to the commanders at the outpost, they did not believe him. They called him a coward. They accused him of abandoning his fleet. They said no primitive species could possibly defeat the mighty Valkyrie. Then they checked their sensors and saw that the invasion fleet was gone. All 42 ships vanished without a trace. The Dominion High Council convened an emergency meeting. For the first time in 1,000 years, they faced a question they had never had to ask before. What do we do now? On Earth, the survivors were rebuilding. Admiral Morrison brought his fleet into orbit and looked down at the wounded planet. The fires had stopped burning, but the scars remained. Great black patches marked the places where cities had once stood. 23 million people were dead. Entire regions had been wiped off the map, but the people who remained were not giving up. They were already clearing the rubble, planting new crops, building new shelters. Humans had survived worse. The Black Death had killed half of Europe. 2 world wars had torn the planet apart. Nuclear weapons had threatened to end everything. Each time, humanity had found a way to keep going. This would be no different. Morrison took a shuttle down to the surface and met with the surviving leaders of the world's nations. They gathered in a tent city outside what used to be Geneva. Sitting on folding chairs around a plastic table, General Lisa Carter was there. Looking older than she had 2 weeks ago, Dr. Nathan Brooks was there. Dark circles under his eyes, but still smiling. Representatives from every major country sat in a circle, united in a way they had never been before. We won, Carter said. But they will come back. Kelver escaped. He will tell the Dominion what happened, and they will want revenge. Then we prepare for them, said the Chinese representative, a woman named Minister Yang. We build more ships, more weapons. We turn our planet into a fortress. And we take the fight to them, said the Russian general, a man named Victor. We do not wait for them to attack again. We find their worlds and we make them pay. Morrison held up his hand. No. Everyone turned to look at him. No revenge, Morrison said. That is not who we are. We defend ourselves. We protect our home. But we do not become conquerors. We do not become like them. They killed millions of our people, Victor said, his voice rising. And you want to let them go? I want to give them a chance. One chance to leave us alone. If they take it, we live in peace. If they do not, Morrison paused. Then we finish what they started. The debate went on for hours. In the end, they reached a decision. Humanity would not seek revenge. They would not launch attacks on Velthury worlds. They would not try to build an empire of their own. But they would send a message. A clear, simple message that every species in the galaxy would hear. Admiral Morrison recorded the transmission himself. He stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, now stationed permanently in Earth orbit, and spoke into the camera. My name is Jack Morrison. I speak for Earth, for humanity, for everyone who lives on this small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. He took a breath. A few weeks ago, an alien empire called the Velthury Dominion attacked our world without warning. They killed 23 million of our people. They destroyed our cities. They thought we were weak. They thought we were primitive. They thought we would surrender. His voice grew harder. They were wrong. In 12 days, we built a fleet from nothing. We developed technology that matched their own. And then we destroyed their entire invasion force without losing a single ship. Behind him, the other ships of the human fleet floated in formation, their weapons powered down but visible. I am not recording this message to threaten anyone. I am not trying to start a war. I am simply stating a fact. Earth is not helpless. Earth is not weak. And anyone who tries to conquer us will learn that lesson the hard way. He leaned closer to the camera. We are humans. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We have survived everything this universe has thrown at us for 100,000 years. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We do not quit. If you attack us, we will fight back. If you kill us, we will keep fighting. And if you think you have beaten us, you are wrong. You have just made us angry. Morrison paused, letting the words sink in. The Velthury thought they knew us. They watched our planet for 3 years. They saw us fight each other over land and resources. They saw our divisions and our weakness. But they did not understand what they were seeing. Our conflicts make us stronger. Our struggles make us harder. Every challenge we face just teaches us new ways to survive. His voice softened slightly. We do not want war. We want peace. We want to explore the stars with wonder, not with weapons. We want to meet other species and learn from them and share what we have discovered. But we will not be conquered. We will not be enslaved. We will not be destroyed. The Admiral stood straighter. To the Velthury Dominion and to every other empire watching this message, leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. Attack us, and we will make you regret it. The choice is yours. He paused one final time. This message will repeat on every frequency we can reach, in every language we can translate, until the end of time. My name is Jack Morrison. I speak for Earth, and we are not afraid. The transmission ended. Deep in Velthury space, the High Council watched the message in silence. They saw the human fleet floating behind their admiral. They saw the confidence in his eyes. They remembered what had happened to their invasion force. And for the first time in their long history, the Velthury Dominion decided to do something they had never done before. They stayed away. Years passed. Then decades. Earth rebuilt itself. The scars of the attack slowly faded as new cities rose where old ones had fallen. Humans ventured out into the solar system, then beyond, exploring worlds no one had ever seen before. They met other species. Some were friendly, some were not, but none of them ever attacked Earth. The message had spread too far. The story had become legend. In taverns and trading posts across 1,000 star systems, beings of all shapes and sizes told tales of the small blue planet that had crushed an entire Velthury fleet in a single afternoon. Admiral Morrison retired eventually. He lived out his final years in a small house on the coast of what used to be California, watching the waves and remembering the people he had lost. His wife, his daughter, his friends. They were gone, but he had made sure their deaths meant something. On his last day, he sat on his porch and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Velthari were still watching, still waiting, still wondering if they should try again. But they never did, because they had learned what the universe would eventually learn about humanity. You could hurt them. You could scare them. You could even kill millions of them. But you could never, ever defeat them. Humans did not know how to lose. They only knew how to fight harder, and anyone who forgot that lesson would be reminded in the most painful way possible. The stars twinkled in the darkness above the old admiral's house. Somewhere out there, a new human ship was being born, carrying the hopes of a species that refused to die. Morrison smiled and closed his eyes. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of things that wanted to destroy them. But humanity would face it all, the same way they had faced everything else ... and they would win.